Video, we'll talk about an influential theory coined by researcher Barbara Fredrickson called the Broaden and Build theory of positive emotion. This is also covered briefly in your textbook. The Broaden and Build theory works like this. Positive emotions lead to broadening in terms of our social and even physical attention. It means that we can see, feel, sense, hear, and experience a lot more of the world than we would otherwise have experienced if we did not have such positive emotion. And this broadening of our attention leads to more opportunities to build material and social resources that will help us to live a happy and fulfilling life. Well, what do we really mean when we say that our attention is broadened due to positive emotion? Well, take a look at the image on the slide here. You can see on the top of the image, there is a target object, which is basically three triangles that combine to form a larger triangle shape. Now, participants are asked which of the other two options, choice A and choice B, most closely resemble the target object. Now, both could potentially be correct. In a sense, choice A is correct because there are three squares, but they form a large triangle shape, which is similar to the target object in that sense. On the other hand, choice B could be correct because the shape is a square, but it's made up of small triangles. What researchers observe is that when people are primed with positive emotion, and usually what this means is they are told to recall a positive memory, or maybe they're shown a brief video clip that is meant to induce happiness, like a YouTube video of a bunch of really adorable kittens and puppies. In situations like that, participants pay more attention to global features compared to local ones. So when people are feeling happy, they're more likely to choose choice A, and that is compared to a control condition where people are more likely to pick choice B. Here's another example of global versus local features. Participants are instructed to find the T. And again, both choices could be correct. It could be that the image on the left is correct because the small L's form a large T, or the right one could be correct because there's an L shaped, but it's made up of small t's. Again, when participants are primed with positive affect, they tend to pick the choice on the left. They tend to pick the big T. They're seeing the big picture relative to the small details. Now, here I want to make the point that these emotional experiences that we have are reflected to some extent in our facial expressions and also in our bodies. When we say that positive emotion broadens our perception, you can kind of see this when you look at people's faces as they're experiencing something positive. People's eyes get wide, especially with regards to emotions like surprise, which tend to be more positive. Negative emotion, by contrast, emotions like anger or disgust or sadness, we tend to see a narrowing. We tend to see people's eyes get narrow and their perception get narrowed too. This could, in some sense, be explained by evolutionary processes. It could be the case that negative emotions evolved in order to help us solve problems. So if there's something right in front of you that needs to be fixed, it would make sense for our emotions to guide our attention to focus more narrowly on that problem that needs to be fixed right away rather than the big picture. Positive emotions, by contrast, serve a different evolutionary function. They serve to make us more aware of all of the good things in the environment that might be available to us. And we can see some of these different processes at work with regards to cognitive effects. So if it's the case that positive emotions broaden our attention, we should see other mental processes associated with broadening reflected by that transformation. And indeed, we do see this. Some studies show that when people are primed with positive emotion, they become more open and flexible in their thinking and become more accepting of new people and new ideas. Positive emotion is great for brainstorming. It's great for creativity, for thinking outside the box. Negative emotion, by contrast, is associated more with skepticism and inquisitiveness. People are more likely to ask tough questions. People are more likely to assume negative motivations from other people and be on guard against them. And I want to make the point here that both of these perspectives have great value to us. Positive psychology does not necessarily show that positive emotions are more beneficial than negative ones. Both are useful depending on the context. And I think that part of the mistake we make is to assume that positive emotions are less useful to us than negative ones. Negative emotions are good for problem solving. Positive emotions are good for flexible and open mindedness. So I tell my students, imagine that you are at the beginning stages of a project where you are designing something independently. In that brainstorming phase, it's more useful to you to experience positive affect. But what about the end of the project when you're in the proofreading and editing stage? In that sense, it might be more useful to be experiencing negative emotion. One more study I want to show you here is about how people respond to stressful situations. And in this particular experiment, the researchers made use of a stress inducing paradigm that involved public speaking, because public speaking tends to be stressful for a majority of people. And it is especially stressful when people are told they need to speak relatively unprepared. So, in this case, they told participants they were going to give a speech to an audience in less than 10 minutes and measured stress related physiological outcomes such as heart rate and blood pressure. Then they also randomly assigned some people to have a positive mood boost. Again, as we talked about earlier, this could be in terms of asking participants to recall a very strong positive emotion memory, or to show them a little video clip of something adorable to give them a bit of a positive mood boost. And they found faster physiological recovery in terms of lower heart rate and lower blood pressure in that condition relative to the control. So there's a benefit from positive emotion in a case like this to help us deal with some of the negative stressors associated with that type of situation. Now, thus far, we haven't talked about the build part of the broaden and build theory. Well, the theory suggests that after we experience the broadening, this allows us to experience more of the world, and part of that experience is about enduring resources. So that means making social connections and forming positive relationships with others. It could mean growing, learning, and developing. This could, manifest in terms of learning new skills or in terms of something involving hobbies or career. This could also manifest in terms of physical health. And there are some studies showing that people who are happier tend to also be healthier in terms of mortality rate, in terms of illness, in terms of recovery. So this is one of the many ways that positive psychology has shown how emotions can have downstream consequences for our health and well-being. And this is why we should take positive psychology very seriously.